Welcome to the holiday edition of the Primal Shift podcast. Here in the United States, we start fall holiday-wise with a candy holiday in October, a pie holiday in November, a cookie holiday in December, followed by a liquor holiday at the end of the year. And then we call it the flu season, and wonder if there is maybe a connection between our lifestyle choices during that time of the year and our propensity to get sick. So in this episode, I'll share with you how the Cummers navigate the holiday season as far as food is concerned. So we, reduce our chances of getting sick, but without necessarily feeling depriving ourselves. Because let's face it, food is more than just fuel for most people. There are social and emotional components involved, and food brings people together. My wife always says that, food brings people together, and who doesn't enjoy sharing a feast with friends and family? So specifically in this episode, I'll cover what foods I categorically avoid, or we avoid as a family, how we transform certain pleasure foods into healthier alternatives, and notice that I said healthier, not healthy, why your metabolic health is a crucial factor in deciding what you can get away with, and how I handle mental battles of how much food, or how much of a certain food I should eat. Can I have one piece? Should I eat the entire thing? Should I avoid it altogether? I've really found it's easier to just avoid those mental battles because very often you lose that fight anyway. Before we step through the individual holidays, and I'm going to share how we approach them, let's talk a little bit about the overall or the overarching strategy or the overarching framework that we apply to holidays, really that we apply to our life, but more specifically to the upcoming holidays. And one of the main things that I want to point out is that if you go off the rails 4 times in a year, or let's say 5 times in a year if you include your birthday, nothing bad is going to happen, assuming you're somewhat metabolically healthy. But if you're in bad metabolic shape, if you already have prediabetes or diabetes or heart disease or gut issues or anything in between, then maybe you cannot afford going off the rails, not only if it's a few times in a year. And the other thing that I want to strongly emphasize is that, doing something for a few times in a year, on those specific holidays is one thing, but turning all of fall into a holiday season and eating less than ideal foods for 3 months in a row is a completely different thing. And I really want you to be conscious about, making those decisions and not saying, it's the holiday season, so I can drink and eat junk food every single day in October, November, and December. If you do this, you're likely not going to recover for the rest of the year, or by the time you have recovered from those poor decisions, you're going to start over again, and you're never in a good metabolic state. So there's a clear difference, and you should take that into account. I also want to point out that I'm not a man of moderation. If you put something in front of me and I want it, I have it all. I don't do like, I can have, one cookie. No, I'm going to eat that whole box, but at the same time, and that's very important, I listen to my body. If my body tells me this is not good for you, I'm not feeling good, I don't sleep well, I cut it off. I'm either all or nothing very often. And so if I know that something is not good for me and I try to avoid those mental battles of just having one or a piece of it, I put myself into an environment where I don't have to make those decisions. If I don't want to drink a glass of wine, I have no wine at home. It's as simple as that. The other thing I want to point out is that we do consume homemade meals made by others, especially around the holidays, even if they are not 100% aligned with our dietary habits. And one great example, I've given that before, is when we visit Austria. My grandma and my granddad, fortunately, are still alive. They are now approaching they're 90. They're actually over 90 already, so they are in excellent shape compared, to their health and lifestyle they've had, I want to say. And if my grandma makes her traditional dishes that she's been making for the past, 40 years that I remember at least, I have those dishes, even if they might include potatoes or, flowers or, stuff that I would normally not gravitate towards, but I know she makes them from scratch with love, using a lot of butter instead of seed oils. So we do eat those dishes, again, even if they're not 100% aligned. The same applies to when we have friends over and they bring, food that we might not be eating every day, but unless they are, store-bought junk food, we ate them anyway. Speaking of junk food, we have a pretty much no junk food policy in our house. I don't ever see myself going to McDonald's or eating candy or having candy at home. There are certain lines in the sand that we draw, and we don't cross those lines. And, that makes it also very difficult then for us to really make poor decisions. We might make less than ideal decisions at times, but it's typically never a poor decision. And so that really helps on, remaining relatively healthy from a metabolic perspective. So now with that overarching theme out of the way, let's talk about some of those holidays, starting with Halloween. And I realize by the time you watch this or you listen to this, Halloween has already passed likely. But because it's next week and I'm recording this just a few days before Halloween, but maybe you can apply then those principles or those ideas or think about them next year. And the thing with Halloween is, I strongly believe that if we criminalize selling raw milk to the public in certain states, like here in Georgia, we should also criminalize giving candy to kids. That's a stance I have. It might not be the most popular opinion, but I truly believe there is absolutely no good reason to give kids candy, period. So that doesn't mean you cannot practice Halloween or you cannot enjoy dressing up and even trick-or-treating. Our kids have not gone trick-or-treating for the past 2 years, but this year they said they want to do it again with their friends, and we don't have an issue with that. They go trick-or-treating, but they know when they come home, they do one of two things. They either dump the candy in the trash, which I think is a waste of candy, but then again, it is what it is. Or sometimes they actually use the candy, to play with their toys, And they're basically turned toys until they, for a while, and then we toss them in the trash. But we have a zero tolerance for candy in the house. We've never had any candy in the house. We will likely never have any candy in the house, and we keep it that way because that's just it's toxic. There's nothing good in a candy other than the taste, arguably, and so we don't even go there. Now, in the past, what we did is, when they were younger, we traded the candy that they got trick-or-treating for healthier treats that my wife would make from scratch at home. It could be anything from a homemade, maybe a sourdough kind of treat. It could be, something as simple as, fruit juices, in ice cubes, or in ice cream made out of ice cream, raw milk ice cream my wife makes from scratch. Something that they feel like, okay, they got something special because it's a holiday, but it's obviously not the candy. And so we don't do that anymore. They are not old enough that they know, why we don't eat candy. And so that's not an issue anymore. But again, either, depending on how your kids are, either avoid the whole circus, or, do it like we do and, just toss it in the trash. We don't give it to someone else either. That was one of the things where in the beginning we thought, well, we could just gift it to someone else. But I'm like, I'm not going to give something that I know is terrible to other kids. That would be hypocritical, so we just dump them in the trash for the most part. So there is I don't have a good solution for Halloween other than maybe, exchanging or trading for something else, for something better. Thanksgiving, however, is a different story. I love Thanksgiving. We all do, even though neither my wife nor I grew up with that holiday. Since she's from Costa Rica, I'm from Austria, we don't do Thanksgiving, but we came to appreciate it once we, came to the US. And there are a couple of things with Thanksgiving. First of all is, the main dish of Thanksgiving typically is a turkey. And as we have learned in one of the last episodes with Dr. Gustin, commercial poultry is just not a health food. It's very high in polyunsaturated fatty acids simply because the type of feed those animals get while being raised, even if it's a pasture-raised turkey, it's not ideal from a fatty acid composition perspective. However, again, as I said before, having turkey once a year is not going to derail us because we make relatively good decisions, for the rest of the year. So we have turkey, and typically we buy a pasture-raised turkey that was fed without soy or corn from a local farm, and again, it's still not ideal, but it's the best we can do at least this year, because next year we're going to be raising our own turkeys in our backyard, and so it's going to be a completely different game. We have full control over what we feed them, so it's going to be hopefully the healthiest turkey we've ever had. But most people cannot obviously raise their own turkeys just because they want to get a good bird. But just buy the best you can and be okay with the turkey that you get. I would probably stay away from a turkey that you buy at a regular grocery store that was fed a crap diet, and it's just not a good bird overall. But do the best you can. For us, it's pasture-raised, soy and corn-free, and we'll roll with it. But even if you have, the least expensive turkey that was not well raised, if you have it only once a year, no big deal at the end of the day. Other than you're probably going to be eating turkey for a couple of days in a row, but still, I don't think it's a problem after all. As far as the stuffing and pies and desserts and stuff are concerned, that's a whole different story, because I think you can derail much more, eating everything that comes with the turkey rather than the turkey itself. And so what we try is, for a couple of years, we didn't do any of that. We, instead of regular stuffing, we put in carrots or some veggies or whatever. Now we don't do that anymore either. But instead, my wife actually makes double fermented sourdough bread from scratch, and we use that as a stuffing. And some of the pies that she makes, they're either with coconut flour or also with sourdough bread. Now again, that's likely better than regular pies, made with regular flour that wasn't fermented, that still has all of the antinutrients in there. But it's definitely better. And so considering again that we are in somewhat good metabolic health, that's okay. I think we can get away with having, sourdough pie, or, sourdough stuffing, once, twice, or maybe 3 times in a year without falling apart. So we do that. One thing that we absolutely don't do is we don't go out in the store and buy those things, processed, meaning that we're not going to buy an apple pie or whatever pie in the store, knowing that it's full of artificial flavors and stabilizers and sugars, processed sugars or artificial sweeteners, and all of the things that we absolutely don't want to have in our diet. We don't do that. But if it's homemade, either by us or by someone we know, we are good with that, because we don't do that every single day. Another thing that we absolutely don't do, even though it's kind of seasonal, is we don't go out and buy those sugar-laden drinks. Let's say the flavored coffee at Starbucks that has like 50 grams of sugar. That's falls into the same category as candy. It's an absolute no-go. We never do this. If we want to have a kind of sweet, beverage that goes with the season, we make our own hot chocolate, using raw milk, using real cocoa, using cinnamon, using raw honey from our own hives, or even maple syrup, So we make those things from scratch, knowing what's in there, and that's going to be significantly better, especially if you make, a real, a hot cocoa with raw milk. I mean, there is nothing in there that you shouldn't be drinking, even if it's made with raw honey or maple syrup, you don't have to worry about this. But the, store-bought Frappuccino or whatever, terrible for you. So we try to make as much as we can ourselves from scratch, knowing what goes in there, and so we can enjoy many of the foods that we typically, or that are traditional for the holiday, like Thanksgiving, without completely going off the rail. For Christmas, it's very similar. We bake cookies either using coconut flour or homemade sourdough. Again, my wife, has mastered the sourdough making process, and so we just double ferment our wheat flour to reduce the antinutrients, and that makes it a little bit more compatible. I don't want to say much more, but a little bit more compatible with human physiology, so you don't, get all your gut issues and some of the other side effects that you get from eating, regular gluten and gluten-containing flours. But our main dish, even for Christmas, is typically something meaty, either a prime rib roast or lamb or something like this. So it's very much meat-focused again, and then we just have some of those sides homemade from scratch that go with it. And even cookies. I mean, we make cookies, or my wife bakes cookies. Sometimes my mom, actually one time my grandma sent us cookies from Austria, and we do eat them. When we visited last year, both my mom and my grandmother, they make cookies, and not sourdough cookies, just regular cookies, but made from scratch using reasonable ingredients, good quality flours, real butter, etc. And we have those. But again, we listen to our bodies. If there is something off, then we stop or we reduce or whatever it takes. We just don't go, on autopilot and keep eating cookies, regardless of how they affect or impact our health and our bodies. But the same goes with Halloween, no candies. We don't do, hang like, chocolate stuff or whatever on the Christmas tree and keep eating them. Those are the things that we absolutely not do. But still, both Thanksgiving as well as Christmas, I like to think that we enjoy a fairly traditional holiday with many of the foods that you would typically eat. We just try to prepare them in the best way possible. That doesn't make us fall off the rails completely. And in combination with listening to our bodies, and eating mostly or more of the foods that are good for us, like the meat part, the roasts, etc., and just less of the side dishes that might be less ideal or less healthy. For New Year, we keep it very simple. We go to bed at our regular time because we don't really see the benefit of disrupting our sleep because of a change in calendar. So we don't stay up until midnight to celebrate. We don't. For us, New Year is nothing special. I don't make New Year's resolutions. If I want to do something, if I want to change something, if I want to improve something, I do it right away. It doesn't really matter what time of the year it is. If I want to do something now in October, I do it right away. I don't wait until, New Year to have like a New Year's resolution. I think whenever you set yourself up for failure, if you postpone things that you could do right away. If you don't do them right away, you're not going to do them in the new year either. That's the experience that I had, and that's what I stick to. Now, on New Year's Day, we often prepare kind of a brunch consisting of, smoked salmon, boiled eggs, ham, cold meats, etc. And that's very much a tradition that I grew up with. So we kind of, brought that back, and we do something somewhat special. It's not really foods that we not have otherwise. Back in the days when I was a kid, smoked salmon and stuff, that was, fairly expensive. We couldn't afford to have that every day. So it was like a special treat. Fortunately, now we are able to have those things more regularly, but it's still just a thought of putting certain types of foods together in a brunch style type of setup is something traditional that we all enjoy, and so we do that. But beyond that, New Year, we don't get wasted, we don't stay up, we try to stick with our regular routine, and then be ready to roll on January 1st. Now, food is obviously not the only thing that we do to keep ourselves healthy and avoid getting sick. Very often I've seen, food is obviously one major factor, but some of the other lifestyle choices that can negatively impact your health and increase your susceptibility to getting sick during that year are things that we very much focus on, including stress management. I think that's really one of the key things. Everything tends to get more stressful and moving faster, and nobody has time, and we need to get this done and this done before the end of the year or before Christmas or before whatever. And so we intentionally try to slow down and really enjoy the process, really enjoy the leaves falling and the days getting shorter, and temperatures being colder, and really enjoy all of those things by actively slowing down. And by doing so, I feel like we also reduce our stress levels and decrease our susceptibility to getting sick, because stress is a major factor that can compromise your immune system and weaken it. So we also try to spend, more time, maybe not more, but at least as much time outside as we do in summer, by going for walks, by hiking, by just enjoying the fresh, crisp air and being more in nature, being more, outside instead of stuck at home under artificial light and with maybe less than ideal air quality in comparison to being outside. We also, during that time of the year, we replace artificial sources of light with beeswax candles. Fortunately, we have bees that produce a lot of wax. So every so often, once a year, typically we melt some of that wax and in poor candles, and we light them in the evening instead of using artificial sources of light to help again our circadian rhythm, to help us sleep better. Sleep is another very important factor in helping your immune system to fight whatever it needs to, that you might get exposed to during the day. We enjoy fall decorations, holiday music, and just the overall spirit without getting too stressed out about what's going on around us. And we also typically during that time of the year always reflect on the current year, on the past couple of months, and be grateful about what we've accomplished, and excited at the same time about what's ahead. What we can do in the new year, what we can do when spring comes around, be it on the homestead, be it on the blogging side, on the podcasting side, whatever the case might be. Always that balance between being grateful and excited about what we can do next. And we try to enjoy as much time as we can, in the company of friends and family. And by bringing that all together, by making reasonable choices as far as food is concerned, by slowing down, by being grateful, by being intentional about what we eat and when we eat things, and thinking about how we can make certain foods that we all enjoy maybe a little bit healthier, that combination has been working out for us so far in making sure we don't get sick during that year. There is nothing worse than being out for 2 weeks because you have the flu or whatever the case may be, is floating around. By just being able to function, by enjoying life, by being able to do the things that you want to do without being negatively impacted by disease, is a great thing. And it's at the end of the day, it's very simple. There is no rocket science. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to have a perfect diet. You don't need to deprive yourself of everything that's out there. Just make smart choices. Listen to your body. Take your health into consideration when you make certain choices. Can you or should you do something even though you're already sick or super stressed out? Maybe today is not the day, to dig into those cookies. Maybe, you're better off, enjoying something else. So be mindful, be intentional. And if you do that, you're going to be in great shape and you can significantly reduce your risk of getting sick. Now, if you like this episode, I hope you did. Let me know, shoot me an email, share the episode with someone who might need to hear this or might need some tips to get them over the line into the new year and to make proper choices. And with that, we're going to wrap it up, and I hope I'll see or hear you in the next episode.